Hello students, in this video we'll see about the evaluation of clustering algorithms. So far we have seen about various clustering algorithms like partitioning algorithms, hierarchical clustering methods and density based clustering algorithms, grid based clustering algorithms and all. So now let's see the evaluation of these clustering algorithms. Basically the evaluation of clustering algorithms is dependent on three important factors, which is called clustering tendency, number of clusters, and the clustering quality. So coming to the clustering tendency, so whatever the data set we take to cluster, make sure that the data set has a clustering tendency. It means that if you are taken the data set with uniform data, so you have the data points which are almost all are in circle shape and only two or three data points which are not in circle shape. So then it may not be easy if the data is uniformly represented. It may not be easy to cluster that. So when you have non-uniform data, so here we have different uniform data, right? So which is in the form of cross, circle, and star. So we can cluster the data points which are crossed, and we can cluster the data points which are in circle shape as well as star shape differently. So we have to see that whenever we select the data set, there should be some non-uniform distribution of points in that data set. So this we call it as the clustering tendency. So there should be some or the other clustering tendency in the data set that has been chosen. So and the next point is the number of clusters. So we have seen some of the algorithms like k-means and k-medoid, where we'll take the factor k to determine the number of clusters to form. So if we take k value as 2, we are forming 2 clusters, right? So if you are we should be careful while selecting this number of clusters. It means that if you are taking the k value as too high, then most of the points which may not related to that cluster will come to the cluster. And if you are taking that value too low, sometimes the data points may not be correctly clustered. So we should be careful that the k value should not be too high or too low. Next, so then how to select the optimal value for k? So basically, we can have two approaches where we can select this k, which is called domain knowledge and data driven approach. So what is this domain knowledge is, when you have the data set, first we need to if you are aware of the domain knowledge of the data set, we can identify what number of clusters that are needed. For example, here you can see, if you know about the iris data set, so we know that there are basically species like virginica and versicolor which are present. So by this domain knowledge, we can identify that forming the 3 clusters is enough. So in this way, this domain knowledge helps us in identifying the value of k. So if we don't have the domain knowledge of the data set, then we'll go for the data driven approach. So in this data driven approach, we'll be using some mathematical methods. So there are many mathematical methods like elbow method, Seelhofer score method, information criteria, where you can find out the right number of clusters that are required for your data set. And the next is the clustering quality. So after forming the cluster, how well your clustering is performing. So that measure is needed, and we call that as the clustering quality. So we should see that there should be minimum intra-cluster distance, and there should be maximum inter-cluster distance. Then only we say that the clustering as a good cluster, right? So majorly we'll be using two types of measures, which is called extrinsic measure and the intrinsic measure. So in the extrinsic measure, we try to identify the ground truth which are there. So for this, the examples are, we have extrinsic measures like adjusted RAD index, and focus malus scores, mutual information based scores and all. And for the intrinsic measures, we need not to have any ground truth. So for this measures, we can go with the coefficient, finding the coefficient, or we have Kalinske-Harzbach index and Davis-Baldwin index, etc. Using this extrinsic and intrinsic measures, we can find out the clustering quality. Thank you.